Sometimes guilt can be a killer. Other times, it's just an actual killer. Welcome to WWH. Thank you for joining us once again. We have another great show in store for you today. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications so you never miss the action. Also, head over to Patreon and become a member of the WWH Universe. Let's get this show started. Today we are taking a look at a film birthed out of Scream's success. In fact, it was even written by Kevin Williamson, the same person who wrote Scream. So let's look at I Know What You Did Last Summer, a movie that I really enjoy. And in my opinion, it's one of the better slasher movies and just horror movies to come out of the 1990s. This film tells the story of a group of friends who accidentally hit a man with their car, and they leave him for dead. A year later, they've moved on, but begin receiving threatening notes from someone who claims to know their secret. The friends start getting attacked by a killer wearing a slicker and wielding a hook. Who will survive? And will they be able to outrun their secret? It was directed by Jim Gillespie, whose biggest credit outside of this film was the movie I See You starring Sly Stallone. Our film stars Jennifer Love Hewitt, Freddie Prinze Jr., Sarah Michelle Gellar, and Ryan Phillippe. A fun fact about Freddie Prinze Jr., he actually worked for WWE as a writer and a producer for a number of years. This film also has a great supporting cast, including Dr. Leonard Hofstadter himself, Johnny Galecki. It also includes Muse Watson and Anne Heche. But with all the technicalities out of the way, let's head down to the ring for some action. The film starts with our protagonists Julie, Ray, Helen, and Barry on a drive along the coast of North Carolina. While driving, they accidentally hit a man who comes from out of nowhere. Initially thinking it's a deer, they look around, but Julie screams in terror when she sees the motionless man lying in the ditch.
I couldn't see it. Look, I swear.
After a short argument, Barry convinces the others they need to dispose of the body to keep themselves out of jail. Suddenly, headlights appear down the road. They move the body quickly while Julie approaches the car being driven by Max, who has a crush on Julie and is jealous of Ray.
You almost got that rich boy act down, Ray. We'll be seeing you, Max. Yep. Take care, Julie.
Julie tells Max they're okay and he goes on his way. The friends take the body down to the water and dump it in. The still living man grabs the tiara off of Helen's head before he goes in the water. She had just won that in a beauty pageant earlier that night. Barry boyfriend dives in and wrestles the title from the victim of their mistake. Once back on the dock, he assaults Julie as Ray just stands by and watches it happen for some reason, and forces them all to make a pact to never speak of this night again. Reluctantly, they all agree, and 1 year later, Julie returns home from college, still all kinds of messed up. She receives an anonymous letter that simply reads, "I know what you did last summer." After that roll credits moment, Julie tracks down her friend Helen, who she hasn't spoken to in a year. In fact, none of them have really spoken to each other since the incident. It's almost like leaving a man for dead could drive people apart. They decide to take the note to Barry, who suspects that Max is the one who wrote it. They take a trip down to the docks to confront Max, where Barry threatens him with a hook.
Jesus!
Listen, I'm gonna say this once. You
Get off
understand?
of me! Understand?
As they leave, they run into Ray, who is now working as a fisherman. Unfortunately for Ray, Julie doesn't want to know him anymore. Later on, Max is killed by someone wearing a slicker and wielding a hook. That same night, Barry gets his own threat in the form of a picture in his gym locker with the words "I know" written on it. He is then ambushed by the same person who killed Max, stealing Barry's car and hitting him with it, but not killing him. Julie starts doing some research in newspapers and is convinced that the man they hit was David Egan. Helen and Julie then take a trip to meet Missy, David's sister, who tells them her family was absolutely devastated by her brother David's death. She also reveals that a friend of David's named Billy Blue came by to visit after his death. That night, the slicker slinks into Helen's room and lies in wait for her to sleep so he can practice for his barber test. Maybe don't quit your day job. Before he leaves her a little note on her mirror. The following morning, Julia hears something making a noise in her trunk, and what could it be? If you guessed Max's dead body wearing Barry's jacket and surrounded by a ton of crabs, well, then you win the Twisted Award, or maybe just the I've seen this movie before award. Julie, Barry, and Helen confront Ray, but he says he got a letter too. Julie goes back to visit Missy while Barry and Helen participate in the 4th of July parade, where Barry tackles this terrified-looking old man who is not the killer. Missy reveals to Julie that David allegedly committed suicide out of guilt for the death of his girlfriend Susie. She even shows Julie the note. The writing on the note matches the same one that Julie received, telling her that it was a death threat, not a suicide note. At the beauty pageant that night, Helen sees Barry being butchered by the slicker man up in the balcony. She rushes upstairs with a police officer, but they find no trace of Barry or the slicker-wearing killer. The police officer escorts Helen home while making fun of her story the entire time. A roadblock that the police officer has no idea about doesn't give him a pause, so he cuts down an alleyway. In the alley, he sees a broken-down car and a man working on it. Despite Helen's warnings, he goes to help but gets killed for his troubles. Helen escapes from the car and runs to her family store where her sister Elsa lets her in. Unfortunately, the killer gets in as well and kills Elsa, then continues his pursuit of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, eventually catching her in an alley outside the store. She is killed and her screams are drowned out by a nearby parade that's literally like 2 feet away from her being killed for whatever reason in the middle of the night. Julie then finds newspaper articles that mention Susie's father, Ben Willis. This is her epiphany as she realizes Ben Willis is the man that they hit with their car, and he had just killed David Egan right before that, blaming David for his daughter's death. She goes down to the docks to tell Ray what she found, but notices the name of Ray's boat is Billy Blue. Terrified, she runs away from him, and then a fisherman appears. The fisherman knocks Ray out and tells Julie to get on his boat. She does, and once inside, she sees a ton of newspaper articles about her and her friends, as well as pictures of Susie. This is Ben Willis. He chases Julie down below deck where she finds her friends' bodies. Ray finally wakes up and steals a boat to go save Julie. He fights with Ben Willis aboard the boat and eventually uses the rigger to cut off the attacker's hand and fling him into the ocean. Julie and Ray are safe, but when the police ask why Ben was trying to kill them, they say they don't know. They are happy that they never actually killed anyone, and they finally reconcile. A year later, Julie is back at college and goes to the showers. She sees the words, "I still know," written on the door. The killer crashes through the glass of the shower, ending this film with a jump scare. This film received 2 sequels, a TV series on Amazon, with an upcoming legacy sequel in the works. We may look at those sequels in the future, but for now, just the original film. I really enjoy this movie, and we'll get into the reasons why in just a minute. But right now we do have to take a quick break, so stick around and we'll be right back with more WWH action. If you're looking to save 20% off of your order from redcon1.com, look no further. I have the perfect deal for you. Use code AndrewDreamer at checkout and you will receive 20% off your entire order. It's a really good deal and they have really good products. I use them every day when I'm in the gym and they have everything you could possibly need to make yourself better and to achieve that highest state of readiness. So go check out their website, order some supplements or protein or anything that you could possibly think of and use code AndrewDreamer to receive 20% off. We are back, and without wasting any time, let's head back down to the ring for the positives. First off, I love the cast of this movie. In my opinion, this movie has one of the best casts of any horror movie. Everybody does a phenomenal job, and I think they all have a really good chemistry that really comes across on screen. I think the idea behind this movie is pretty interesting. It was very loosely based on a novel of the same name by Lois Duncan, and Kevin Williamson turned it into a fairly effective slasher. And I just love the way that Williamson writes. I think he's actually one of the better writers out there, and he's just so freaking creative. The setting of this film is a really good one too. It's this little quaint fishing town in North Carolina, and they managed to make it feel so secluded, even though it's just this small town. And that really works in this film's favor. But I'm gonna leave it there for now, so let me know in the comments what you like about this film. Let's move on now. My first negative for I Know What You Did Last Summer is how boring a lot of the kills are. There's really nothing special here, whether it be the uniqueness of the kills or even the gore. Some of it's even done off screen, and I'm not a fan of that at all. Another issue I have is how much like Scream this movie is, and I really do understand why it's similar, but it's still an issue nonetheless. And despite how much I love the cast, Barry is just such an unlikable character. There's basically nothing redeemable about him. He's a jerk to everybody around him and really exemplifies that kind of arrogant rich kid persona. Some of that could be how well Ryan Phillippe portrays the character too, but I digress. And the last thing that I'll mention is how obvious it is who the killer is when we get to that third act. This character shows up that we've never even seen before, and it's actually very clear that he's the killer. They do a lot story-wise to try to alleviate that, but it's still there. It's like the original Friday the 13th. The character shows up that we've never seen, and as part of the audience, you immediately know, hey, it's him. He's the one behind it all. I just don't think it's the most effective way to do a whodunit film. I'm going to leave it there because we're almost out of time, and it is time to wrap up our show now. Subscribe if you haven't done that already. Leave a like and comment with your thoughts on this film. Head over to Patreon and become a member of the WWH Universe. Thank you for joining us today, and there is so much more coming your way very soon. But until then, my name is Andrew Dreamer, and this is Wrestling with Horror.